What's going on, everybody? Another week, another WTF in the house. This is a show we do weekly. We cover the news, but not so much the mainline news. We cover news that we find in white papers and articles. Some would say the truth. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things today. And we are going to probably rant. Stephen, I'm sure, will rave, and we might argue. Who knows? I mean, we can get into a lot of different things, but we're going to talk about, oh my gosh, all of the executive orders. We're going to hit as many of them as we can. We're going to talk about DeepSeek, okay, AI. We're going to talk about what's going on with Alphabet. Some of you know it as Google and their miss, how their stock is down 7%. We're going to talk about Deutsche Bank, who has just had a major issue, and that stock was down 92%. What is going on over there in EU and Germany? But we're also going to talk about U.S. aid and a whole bunch of other things on today's show. So get ready, buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride. We'll be right back after this. All right, welcome back, everybody. Another week, another What the F Happened. This is a show we do weekly. We rant, we rave, and we do argue about what's in the news. But we have kind of taken this show off mainline news and gone more to what some would say is the truth, which is subscribed newsletters, white papers, economic reports. And, well, some of it does come from social media, which, you can take that with a grain of sand. But it's a show that Stephen and I have been doing now for quite some time. It's gained a lot of popularity, and I want to give a big shout out to all of you, our loyal followers on here. We no longer stream on TikTok for obvious reasons, but for the rest of you on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and support and your comments. So with that being said, Stephen, where should we even begin?
Holy cow.
I don't even know. I honestly don't even know where to start.
I've never seen in my lifetime and reading history a president come in this hot, this heated, this active, this on a mission to make change and actually start doing something that's never been done before, which is looking into the corruption, fraud, and inefficiencies of the federal government. I mean, one of the reasons, over the years why I've kind of, drifted over to the right side, the conservative side, the Republican side, whatever you want to say, is because I've always felt like there's just so much fraud and corruption out there in the federal government, big government, huge, controlling every aspect of your life and everything else. And, I've into my, I don't know, maybe older age, maybe better understanding of the world, I understand that, hey, local community, smaller, controlled stuff makes so much more sense. I mean, we pay so much money in taxes. I know, Chris, just this last year, you've been talking all about all the taxes you've been hit with. And then when you look at, okay, so I don't mind paying taxes if it's truly helping people in this country, in this world, other human beings. But when you look at where our taxes actually go, it makes you want to puke. At least me. It makes me just want to completely quit. It's wild. And
maybe that's why I've been sick for so long.
Probably. I mean, we can get into some of this, but it is unbelievable. And it's all being uncovered right now with USAID. Now, remember, USAID, a lot of people call it US aid. It's like all the bills that they put out there, Chris. Like they have a bill and they name it something to try and push whatever agenda they have, and the name has nothing to do with the bill itself. Well, that's US aid, USAID.
You mean like the Inflation Reduction Act that did nothing but increase inflation, like that?
By a long shot, yeah. So it's the U.S. Agency for International Development is the real name of the agency, and it is just full of some of the most absurd things you've ever seen in your life. So we can get into some of that.
Before we do that, let's tell the audience. I think some people are confused as to what USAID is or USAID is, but I got an article, and again, this is from those white papers we get, Many Americans still have no idea that USAID is a government agency delivering relief at disaster sites. Hold on, brace yourself, overseas. They may still remember the bags of rice and grain with the USAID logo on them, but that is not USAID. USAID is a key component of the U.S. government's regime change operations worldwide. USAID spends billions of dollars every year propping up NGOs overseas that function as a shadow governments, eating away at elected governments that the U.S. interventionalists, there we go, want to overthrow. So, Stephen, do you want to take it from there, or should I just keep going? Because it just gets sicker and sicker the more we learn about this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe later in the show we can get into some of the actual, like, where the money's going, but it's basically what this reminds me of is what Trump is doing right now with the mandate that he received with this past election. And remember, everything, we're being gaslit once again by the whole entire Democratic Party. I mean, you see all the leaders, Chuck Schumer, all the normal people out there just saying, Elon Musk is unelected. He's the shadow government. He's going to destroy the Constitution and all the rest that these guys are out there saying. But let's look in the mirror real fast at what's actually happening. I mean, Donald Trump ran on this. Donald Trump ran on DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, with Elon Musk heading it up. He said this was going to happen. He said this is what we're going to do. I mean, this basically is the equivalent of, like, if you go to jail, Chris, what do they always recommend your first day in jail that you do? You find the biggest guy in the room, you go up to him and you punch him right in the face.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
you want to, like, create your dominance, create your, respect in the room. And it seems to be, to me, that's what they're doing. They pick the biggest fraud organization out there in USAID. They went up to it and just completely dismantled the whole thing. They announced yesterday all direct employees of USAID are now, on administrative leave, or whatever you want to call it. And so my question for the audience, what is the argument against what they're doing with USAID right now? Like, why do you, because there's a lot of people right now that are very, very, very upset about this.
But they don't understand it. They truly probably don't understand what
it is. But is that why? Like, I'd like to hear the comments from the crowd, because I would love to know how you do not support where, uncovering the fraud and corruption of where our tax dollars are going. Like, what's the argument against that? I really would love to hear. So that's what I got to say about you.
While everybody's, posting in there, like, give your comments, because this is definitely very controversial, but hey, we go down any road here on this show. I mean, we don't care whether we're pissing someone off or starting a fight. That just doesn't matter. That's, we got to get this stuff out there. We're not CNN where we're only going to tell you anyway, we're not even going to go there, but right here's an interesting thing. I just saw this. And I know it is controversial even saying this. Elon Musk recently reposted a New York Post article on X reporting that the USAID funneled $53 million to EcoHealth Alliance to support gain-of-function research on coronaviruses at the Wuhan lab. So did USAID help fund COVID? Is one of the questions. Americans have the right to know this. Americans have the right to know, was JFK assassinated internally? Was that an inside job? There's a lot coming out on that. I mean, there's so much we need to know. I mean, gosh, not long ago, like, we learned that UFOs, well, they're real. Anyway, but there's so much just corruption. And I think what you're seeing is that corruption just be, put in front line. The hard part is it's hard. You don't know what to believe, because the Democrats are just out there, and we're going to hit that. And I don't mean to make this about Democrats, but we are going to have to hit that, because Elizabeth Warren, and I can't remember how this came out, but did you all know that to me, she's just a piece of shit. If any of you like her, we have definitely some differences ethically, but she accepted $5 million from the pharmaceutical companies. Like, that's fact. No, that is absolute fact. But let's see. So Nelson Camp, coming in from Instagram, said all the people with unnecessary unionized government jobs that are unemployable in the private sector and shaking in their boots at the mention of Doge. Well, what's going on, Nelson? I've known Nelson for many, many years. He's one of our northern neighbors, doing awesome things up there. But what other ones we got down here?
Hey, speaking of Canada, so
Yeah.
it's
Well, let's pause on that one for a second. We'll come back to Canada and the tariffs and what's going on there. And I was very confused. And Nelson maybe can help me here. Trudeau, if I'm not mistaken, like you guys ousted his ass, right? Like you're like he's done, but yet he's still making decisions because they don't have somebody new, which I think is a large reason. And this is my thought why Trump kind of pushed 30 days on the tariffs for Canada, because probably makes sense that you guys actually have a leader that actually has a brain before the U.S. slaps a 25% tariff on you, so that there could be some negotiations. But I don't know, Stephen, what are your thoughts? Nelson, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's just interesting. I mean, everything that Trump is doing right now, he's threatening people. Nobody knows what he's going to do. We talked about this last week. He's a madman. Like nobody knows what he's capable of. They all think he'll follow through with what he's saying. I mean, it happened this week in broad daylight within 24 hours. It was, I'm putting full tariffs or huge tariffs on Mexico and Canada. I'm not looking to negotiate. I'm doing it. It needs to happen. And within 24 hours, these deals came out that Mexico is going to do everything Trump wanted them to, and Canada is going to do everything that Trump wanted him to do within 24 hours. And during that 24-hour span, it was wild to watch the anti-Trump people, the anti, I don't know how you look at it any other way than anti-American at this point, but I'll just call it anti-Trump people, and how they, they lost their minds. We're all going to pay so much more for everything, and this is not what we sign on for. It's going to destroy America. And within 24 hours, like they folded and bent the knee to Trump essentially in the United States of America. And he was proved right once again. And I saw this happen again yesterday where he came on TV. So Benjamin Netanyahu, the president of Israel, of course, is visiting the U.S. right now, is at the White House, and they held a press conference. And all of a sudden, Trump starts talking about, at this press conference that the United States is going to annex and take over Gaza. Now, that's a whole debate and discussion in itself. I think most people don't think that's a good idea, don't want that to happen. But when you watch the video, this was interesting. I watched the video and two different angles of close-ups on Netanyahu's face. And when Trump said that, I don't think Netanyahu knew he was going to say it. And you look at his face, he started being like, "You're going to do what? Like, why?" Like, it's almost like he's playing 3D chess and he's 10 moves ahead of everybody else in the world right now. Like maybe he announced that because he has some back deal. He's trying to work with Netanyahu. And he's like, listen, if you don't listen to me, I'm going to step in. The U.S. is going to do this. And I know you guys don't want that either. And so, it's hard to, like, this news cycle that we live in today where everybody on X and the news and everybody's competing to get the first opinion, the first word out there. And then all of a sudden within 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 24 hours, the whole story changes. It's really fascinating to watch right now. It's really cool, man. So who knows what's going to happen with Gaza? And like I said, that's a whole nother discussion, but I feel like it might just be Trump kind of using his negotiating strange style to get what he wants. And we'll see how that plays out. I mean, one more story from yesterday, Chris. They announced the United States Post Office was halting all package deliveries from China and Hong Kong. And all of a sudden I read this morning, no, they all of a sudden figured out how to tariff them. So it's like, again, 12 hours later and things have got fixed. And I've never seen a president of the United States government come in, start just to like deconstructing stuff, making moves and making things happen, results, implementing immediately. Like it's really, really fascinating.
Yeah. So I want to hit a couple things. So Nelson Camp came in, on the, Trudeau thing. He said, if he opens government, he will immediately be called a non-confidence vote and snap federal election will happen. So, again, I don't really know everything that's going on with Trudeau. I was sitting here in the U.S., kind of watching it from afar. When we saw Trudeau go, we're like, see ya. I don't even think Canadians like Trudeau. Nelson confirmed that. I think the large popular vote about Trudeau is just get rid of this loser. It's kind of like Gavin Newsom. Like, I don't know of no one in California or anywhere else that I've ever talked to that thinks Gavin Newsom is a good guy and should be leading. But yet he gets the votes, or at least did, because we know there's some hanky-panky going on there. So I just think, largely, I think people intuitively know like what's best. But now when you see everything that's happening, with Trump as president, he's got like, I love what Morgan said down there. He's playing 4-dimensional chess when everybody else is playing checkers. Like, it just seems that way. But holy crap, is it a lot to digest? I mean, it really is a lot to digest. And one other thing that somebody said on here, somebody said that RFK did get confirmation, but I have not seen that. I've been watching that every day. He made it through one round, but I thought there was a final step. So if we can get confirmation on RFK, is he in? Is he almost in? Like, I know that was a really interesting thing to watch, and I caught bits and pieces of it. Yeah, so I do want to kind of keep this sucker going because there's so much to do. First off, Stephen, where do you want to go somewhere else with this, or?
No, keep rolling. I mean, yeah, so RFK closed into being closer, not completely confirmed yet. He did get approved by the Senate panel vote, so it does move on, I believe, to the floor vote next, which I assume would be today. I do believe that.
Yeah, it is today. Today is the day.
Tulsi Gabbard also, I believe, was moved on to the next phase. We'll see where that goes. But from what I'm reading behind the scenes, there's kind of some of the votes, the deciding votes, one way or the other for RFK. It seems like they've negotiated with RFK and are happy with what they're hearing, and it sounds like that they are going to vote for him. Which, man,
I thought it was interesting that they literally point blank came out and said, if you get sworn in, like, you're not going to sue the pharmaceutical companies or something to that extent. And RFK was like, I never said that. Like, did you see that? Where like they were literally asking him, like, if we swear you, kind of like this side thing, like, we want to know that you're not going to go after and sue the pharmaceutical companies for COVID. And he just flat out said, I didn't say that. And I'm not agreeing to that.
Yeah, it's
wow.
Look
at Susanna.
Stark difference between the last health secretary that we had in Rachel Levine, which was an out of shape dude that claims to be a woman or whatever was going on there, and then you see RFK who's 70. How old's RFK now, Chris? 70 something years old. I mean,
and I only wish I looked like that with my
pack. Yeah, I mean, like, unbelievable. Like, what a stark difference in just even just the visuals of it all. Like, it's wild.
Wow. All right. Well, let's keep going. I want to keep going a little bit here. I got a pretty cool article that I was reading before WTF, and it's on trade war. And I can go back, and I know I've talked about this book a lot, but The End of the World is just the beginning. It's a book about geopolitics, but it talked a lot in that book. And remember, this book was written before any of this was happening. And the book was written by a stark Democrat. I just, want you to know that. So, like, several factors, like, he's a stark Democrat, he's gay, which no big deal there, but just the book just talks facts, and it talks about geopolitics. It talks about trade wars, and it talks about how the United States is in a better place than any other country. And literally, like, I know a lot of people out there, they look at China, and China is a threat, and we're going to cover China in a second, but I talk about how China is so strong and they're going to be the next world power. And I know Ray Dalio, in his videos, he's showing China coming up, but China can't maintain. China doesn't have the demographics, doesn't have the resources to maintain. Literally, China creates, does everybody know this? China creates nothing. Nothing. In the grand scheme of things, if you really look at China's economy and their economic output, what do they create? Nothing. I mean, maybe DeepSeek, but like everything that China does is stolen from somebody else.
Yeah, well, they say DeepSeek was too. I mean, DeepSeek was.
Well, I'm sure it was. I'm just bringing that up because that was news. But like, China doesn't create anything. They just steal everything, and then they can make it cheaper because their labor pool. But that's ending. That you got to understand. This happens with every single country. Every rising country, when they go from third world, second world, and then they become first world country, wages have to go up. Now, the CCP, because pure communist, has controlled that very well. But one of the things they really effed up on is when they started telling families they could only have one child. So what that did is, and that happened for quite some time, is that really stunted their demographic growth. And as their economy grew, and now how it has to grow, they physically, it is proven, this is not an opinion, they cannot maintain their economic growth with their demographics. They simply can't. And I think I'm pretty safe to say, and I think Nelson would second this, If you live in pretty much any other country in the world, maybe with the exception of a few, ain't nobody wants to go to China. Like, I don't know a single American or Canadian that wants to get up and move to China because it's better there. So, like, they don't have an immigration problem over there because nobody wants to immigrate into China. So China, although they've definitely got, a lot going for them right now, in the next 10 years, just 10 years, it will drastically change. Now, India, they've got some steam, they've got some stuff, but let's get back to trade wars because that's really what we're talking about. So all this tariff stuff basically enters into what that book covered on trade wars, and trade wars are heating up right now. So, I know, Trump kind of changed course, with Mexico, which it sounded like he was making some headways with the president in Mexico. Also paused it for Canada for just 30 days. I mean, it's not very long. We snap in 30 days, will be over. But China, he added 10% onto what the current tariffs were. Well, China retaliated, and China is now putting tariffs on our goods. So that's what's going to happen. You're going to, in China, or Canada said they were going to do the same thing. Mexico said they were going to do the same thing. It's a retaliate, they're all going to retaliate, which, what does that mean? Well, I don't know, to be quite honest, but I can read this article, and it goes on to say that Canada announced it will retaliate against Trump's tariffs with 25% on a list of U.S. imports. China struck back pretty hardcore, 15%. They rolled out a series of retaliatory measures to counteract the planned tariffs. So all these things basically are creating a full-scale global trade war. I don't know what that means. I really don't. There's some people that are much smarter than me, but right here's the neighborhood wars, and give some numbers just to put things in perspective. Canada, $419 billion. Mexico, $475 billion, account for almost 30% of all goods imported into the United States. Just Canada and Mexico. That's why those two were targeted. Canada, Mexico, and China are the three largest trading partners in the U.S. Obviously, Canada and Mexico are our closest neighbors, and each shares a long border with the U.S., and new trade wars will have many facets. But solving problems with regard to these trade wars and these different tariffs, that's just part of a global puzzle. In that book, again, it literally said that these trade wars, exactly what is unfolding real time right now and will continue to unfold. In that book, what it basically said is it's going to fracture world trade, period. So what you could maybe look at, and we'll get into tariffs in a second because most people don't even understand tariffs, but I'm kind of leading up to this. What effectively is going to happen in the future is, and Trump's nailed this. It's been part of his thing the entire time. Make America great again. And you can see it. You can see it to the core. He is all about America. That is it. He gives two shits about anybody else right now until America's fixed. Now, that's a good problem for all Americans because we do have the resources. I'm not going to say we're doing great with the demographics. We got to pop out a lot more kids. Okay, we're all trying to do our part. Steven's going to try to do his part, or at least try. We're all going to try to do our part and increase the demographics here in the U.S. But one thing that we've got going for us here, I know this is going to come with some controversy, is people do want to move to the United States of America. They always have. Immigration is such an important part of the US's global, just our global GDP ability and everything else, because Americans don't want to do a lot of the jobs that are necessary to keep the US economy growing. They just don't. But immigrants do. The problem isn't, immigration, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, Trump's anti-immigration. No, he's actually pro-immigration. He's very anti-illegal immigration. And that was what the last administration really was doing, just flooding the U.S. with just criminals and just illegals. Like, listen, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, but we need immigration. But the good news is people want to move here. They don't want to move to China. I don't think a lot of people are rushing to move to India. India doesn't have a problem with population right now. So all of this plays very well for the U.S. And maybe it will play very well for Canada. I don't know. I mean, will Canada become part of the U.S.? Who knows? I mean, who knows? Doubt it, but it's worth talking about. So when you're really looking at all this stuff happening and, you really have to see the big picture. The big picture is everything that we have come to know and come to just get used to with globalization, I'll just use it as that, is coming to an end. It truly is. These trade wars will be the first domino of a much bigger, I don't know, is it a problem or is it a solution? Because it could be both. You know, it's a curse and it's a blessing all in the same thing. But one of the things I want to kind of dive into is I want to just spend just 1 second, because there was an interesting statistic that was just done that said that only 45% of Americans know what a tariff is. So now, if any of you have been following my YouTube videos, I've done a lot on tariffs. So if you haven't, then go to my YouTube channel at the Chris Naugle if you want to learn what this is. But there was literally only 45% of Americans that knew what this was. And that's a big problem because a lot of people don't understand how tariffs work. Very few people have studied what tariffs have been used for in the past and how they've effectively literally helped, economies and helped a lot of people. But the problem with tariffs, and the biggest problem we have right now, and, Democrats are very quick to kind of call this out, is that tariffs will make goods cost more. Absolutely true. In this, where it's going through, and I just want to read this one thing, it's talking about right here. It says, are you willing to pay a dime a gallon more for gas? So would you be willing to pay 10 cents more per gallon of gas if that meant it would stop the flow of fentanyl from Canada into the United States of America? Nobody on this, nobody listening to this would say, no, I don't want to pay 10 cents more a gallon. Every one of you would do that to stop fentanyl, because fentanyl is killing our kids, killing, it's one of the biggest problems we have when it comes to drugs is fentanyl. So I don't think anybody would have that problem. Effectively, you need to think about that with all tariffs. It is going to make things cost more. No ifs, no ands, no buts about it. Matter of fact, it probably will increase inflation again, giving the Fed, I don't even know. The Fed's going to have to really figure that one out, because I don't know how they're going to handle it, because we've been trying to bring inflation down, and now inflation more than likely will be artificially increased because of tariffs. But tariffs will have a short-term effect. And the easiest thing, I've said this before, and then I'm going to shut up and let Stephen come in. And I want to hit on a couple of things here before this show's done about what the markets are looking like and what you can expect there. But the tariffs, because they're going to increase the cost, what that's going to mean is several things. This article did a great job of covering it. It said, this will be the golden age of America, but there will be some pain. That was Trump's words. And effectively, when you put tariffs on, let's just say 25% for Mexico and Canada, industries that, one of two things are going to happen. Either the end recipient, okay, the manufacturer that's buying goods from Canada or importing goods from Canada, they're going to pay for that. Then that's going to pass down to the wholesalers, and eventually it's going to pass to the retail. And who always pays for everything? You and I, taxpayers. We are the end recipient. We pay for it all. So that's the problem. But what will eventually happen is the same thing that happened back in the 80s with Japan. Tariffs were put on, Japanese cars. So what did Japan do? Moved all their manufacturing to the US, creating tens, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs, good paying jobs here in the US, which still to today is a very positive thing for the United States of America. But that problem back in the 80s was a very severe problem of the US car manufacturers could not compete with Japanese cars. And they were coming over in boatloads, and people wanted them because they were more fuel efficient, more cost effective, and they were just what people wanted. So the same thing is true today. Look at the road, look out. How many Toyotas do you see in a day? How many Hyundais, how many Kias, how many, all those cars, they're all Japanese cars, but they are all made here in the United States of America. It's a funny thing how that happened. The same bloody thing will happen for all of the goods and services that are being, tariffs are being put on them. That manufacturing will eventually move here, creating more jobs here, creating more income here, creating a better life for Americans. No disrespect to our northern neighbors, because it's probably going to suck, for Canadians, but nonetheless. And not only that, it's going to, just like you've already seen with the Saudis, it's going to force foreign nations to invest heavily in the United States of America because, well, they don't have any other choice. The United States is such a powerhouse, such an importer, that so much of the world is relying on the United States economy. So therefore, if the United States doesn't keep buying their stuff, they just can't make it. I mean, that's the whole sum up. I mean, I could go deeper into this, but let me just pause. And the one last thing, did you all notice that, when Trump was saying that about the tariffs. Let's pick on Canada for a second. We import a lot of oil from Canada. One thing he did is he said he wasn't going to put as big of a tariff on oil, which is essentially saying, I don't want to increase the cost of gas for Americans, because he knows it's going to have pain in the beginning. Stephen, what's your take on this whole thing?
No, so you're spot on. I mean, we got some good comments coming over here. I mean, Dexter's saying, I'm okay with eating beans and rice temporarily for a great cause, which, I mean, you have to remember, we all, most of us all have, children and, there's the next generation to think about. And I mean, we're just this country, $36 trillion. Like it's hard to fathom, Chris, how much $1 trillion really is. It's hard to imagine what $1 billion is for most people. And then you get to $1 trillion, it's just like a made up number. We're over $36 trillion in debt in this country. And it's accelerating at a rate and a pace we've never seen before in history. And so things have to change. Like we have to make these changes. And so, everything that I'm seeing happening right now, again, I would love to hear the counter argument against this stuff. I mean, I guess, paying 10 cents extra for gas, sure, but how much more have we paid for everything over the last 4 years because of bad policy that's doing nothing for the progress and the future of America and make things worse? So we were paying much higher prices with zero future. At least some of this discussion is, hey, let's pay a little bit more now so we can fix things in the future. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And we can stay on that. I mean, the other latest news coming out right now is once they're done with this USAID crap, they're now moving on. It looks like the CIA put out an email yesterday to its entire workforce, offering to buy them out. As you know, last week, the entire federal government sent out letters offering 8 months pay to anybody that just leaves now voluntarily. They had 20,000 people accept. So they're actively looking to lower. And now overnight, moving into this morning, guess what they're after? The Department of Education, Chris.
Yeah, I saw that they're saying they're going to shut it down. But you know what? How antiquated is the Department of Education? Like, I'll be the first to sit there and say it. Like the Department of Education should have been shut down a long time ago and rebuilt, because it to me, and if there's any teachers watching, I don't know whether you disagree, agree, or however you want to put this, but it is just broken. Like I see it firsthand. We have a soon to not have a foreign exchange student with us, but she's in school, and I early on when she was there, we would talk to her about what they're teaching her, and effectively, like what I know of the education system, at that level, that would be a junior level. The things that she is learning in school have so little to do with actual application in real life. So little of it is connected to what we actually need to thrive in the real world. It's just part of an antiquated freaking program that, I mean, literally, if you take it back to the Rockefellers, the Rockefellers effectively created the education system to create, I don't want to say drone workers, but workers, because at that time, that's what they needed. But we've failed to change the way we teach our children. Japan is a great model. You want to learn what education should be for kids, learn from Japan. Take their education system and their model. That is what we need more of here, but we don't have it. What is this showing, Stephen?
Yeah, this is since the last 11 years, since 2013, just showing the change in spending for education, up 56%, the change, inflation over that time period. So well overpacing inflation. And then it shows reading and math average scores over that time period. You can see how they are just falling like a rock. So all of this spending is leading to worse and worse scores. So this is something that's a long time coming. It's one of those things where at first kind of, thought you're like, well, we can't eliminate the Department of Education. Like, what's going to happen? But when you look at the reality of it, it has to happen. We are falling behind so many other countries out there in this world. We are not raising the brightest and best these days. And at some point you have to change that. And so it's good to see, whether this happens or not, where it leads to. something needs to occur. So it's kind of good to see that. And I got one other graphic I'll share real fast just to kind of show you what else has gone on over the last, several years with education in this country. But this one shows growth in administrative staff, principals, teachers, and students in public schools. So if you look at this bottom line right here, this blue line, this is the increase in students from the year 2000 through 2022. You can see it's been an increase in students by about 5% in public education. Teachers have risen slightly over the time as well. But then look at the bureaucracy involved. Remember, bureaucracy does nothing for our children. Teachers. So we have principals and assistants have skyrocketed, but even worse than that, just administrative staff, pure bureaucracy has shot up almost 100% over the last 20 years with a 5% increase in students. So you can see, and similar things with the federal government. I mean, just a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of useless positions, useless people that do literally nothing. And that's what a lot of this is. And I can speak firsthand to this. I mean, my wife, again, was a teacher for almost 15 years. Luckily was able to retire a couple of years ago and get into something else, but she was public education teacher for almost 15 years. And she experienced a lot of this stuff over that time span of just ridiculous things going on within the public education sector. And so it's one of those kind of necessary evils, I guess, so to say, that we need to do something different in this country for sure.
Yeah. Like teach people how money really works, right? That might not be such a bad thing to teach our kids. I mean,
yeah, and it's not all about scores and getting to college. Like, what about trade schools? What about the industries, things like plumbers and electricians and everything else out there, the specialty jobs. I mean, how to run a business, how to do taxes, how to, all this stuff out there. I mean, we're waiting, you hear all these people talking about, well, Elon Musk is an unelected bureaucrat that's out there destroying everything with Doge, and Doge is not a real government agency and all this. And Elon's like, fine, I will happily close down Doge and quit if you also close down and quit all the other unelected things like the FBI, the IRS, all these other agencies out there that were just made up out of bureaucracies and have become completely inefficient and wasted. And it's a good point right there. Like, who are the people that are fighting against spending our tax dollars and making America better? Like, who are those people? Maybe those are the people you don't want to be on the side of.
Yeah, I'm glad that Lisa chimed in, because Lisa, she's a retired teacher, but she said the Department of Education is a pendulum that swings with no in between. Someone never in the classroom says this will work, and the minions lash on, or I think I'm reading this right. Minions lash on and runs to the other side. It's a cycle. Well said. So one of the things I want to read, this is going to be hard for some of you to hear. I've talked about this before. It's kind of one of those things that's just easier just to take it out of your mind and not pay attention to, but it's worthy of me reading this, because this is in one of those economic newsletters, and it kind of goes along with everything else that's happening, because this is the same article that was talking about trade wars. It was talking about all the stuff that's going on in Russia-Ukraine war, but this is a follow-up. It says, for the record, the doomsday clock is closer to midnight than it's ever been in its 78-year history. On Friday, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist issued its annual update to the clock. If you don't know what the doomsday clock is, you can Google it. To the clock that symbolizes the risk of nuclear Armageddon. They inched it forward a second, 89 seconds to midnight. The war in Ukraine, now in its third year, looms over the world. The conflict could become nuclear at any moment because of its rash decision.
Nonsense.
Or through accident or miscalculation, says the bulletin statement. The nuclear arms control process is collapsing. The high-level contacts among nuclear powers are totally inadequate, and given that the danger at hand. This is true. The back and forth that Washington and Moscow implemented after the Cuban Missile Crisis in '62, and continued for the duration of the Cold War, it's nowhere to be found now. So basically, what this is saying is, it says a year ago we devoted all 5 of our bullets to the doomsday clock, and why it's even closer to midnight now than it was back in the early '60s. It's relevant that our financial beat, in the sense that if a nuclear war breaks out, there won't be any market or economy for us to talk about. I know you said, Stephen, you're saying that's nonsense, right?
Yep.
Good. Well, I think we all want to know that that's nonsense. But here's another deadline that Trump set out. So Trump is supposed to outline a plan to release the remaining redacted JFK assassination files. So that one's coming. I think we all would like to know the truth about that and see what happened.
Yeah, I mean, other big news, I mean, just kind of in the whole, government waste sector or, very propagandist activist as opposed to, being kind of, actual news is NPR. Did you ever
Oh,
listen to
yeah.
NPR back in the day, Chris?
Back in the day, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So years ago, I listened to NPR. My wife used to listen to it a lot, like, 10, 15 years ago. And, over the years, it's one of those things where you start hearing things and you're like, this seems a little biased. This seems a little, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Well, it's all coming to fruition right now. One of the senior editors and people that's been at NPR forever, Uri Berliner, officially resigned this week, writing a letter to the new CEO, basically blasting the company and, calling out how just completely biased to the left, to the Democratic side, progressive Democrat side, NPR has become and basically become an activist organization. He said, I want no part of this any longer. And so now we're seeing a lot of calls for, NPR defunding. And, what do you expect though? Like when you just become an activist, you can no longer, expect to be treated as an unbiased source. I mean, we see it with CNN. I mean, does anybody watch CNN anymore? Like real story, like other than being in an airport, like when's the last time you got CNN on the television other than maybe like accidentally clicking on it? Like, I don't think anybody watches CNN anymore. I mean,
I do, just to see the stark difference between the other channels.
It's unbelievable, man. Just they're all activists out there, but NPR is publicly funded. It's national public radio. And so that just, it can't happen. So again, just what is going on right now, just in the first 2 weeks of this presidency. And JD Vance, our vice president, he came out yesterday and said, hey guys, like, there's no letting off this gas. Like what we're doing these first 2 weeks, we're doing this through the first 4 years. Like we're not slowing down. We're going full steam ahead. And let me tell you, JD Vance is one of the most impressive vice presidents that I've ever seen. The guy is a stud. He knows his stuff. He knows how to handle the press. He knows how to answer questions, and he's smart as hell, Chris. I mean, JD Vance is a smart guy. So you got to love seeing what's happening right now. Again, I'd like to hear the counter arguments. I'm not seeing anything coming through.
Well, no, we do. We had one counter. Brad Albers coming in from YouTube said, I can't believe the level of ignorance being stated here is facts. So, I mean, a couple of people are commenting on that. I love,
I don't see that.
I'm just going to talk about Lisa's comment here. She said, so many people get hired to tell teachers how to do their job. Teachers need opinion makers to stay out of the classrooms. That I think is a fact. What other stuff do you think that Brad's?
What have I said? That's not a fact, though. I would love.
Well, that's what I'm asking. That's what I'm asking.
One example.
I mean, maybe the doomsday clock. Maybe that's what he heard. I was just reading that just because it's a frightening thought.
Ooh, climate change, doomsday clock. Come on, man.
That's like I said, some people aren't going to want to hear this. I called it out. So Brad, if you could tell us, like, what are we stating here that you don't believe is fact? Okay. So that would be the thing. You can't just come on and say, I can't believe the level of ignorance being stated here is, I think it's supposed to say as facts, not is facts. You're not from, anyway, I'm not even going to go there, but it's not is, Brad, it's as facts. So, well, we'll see. Climate is always changing. Yes, it is. And you know what? Thank goodness, because we are having a beautiful, beautiful winter here in Buffalo, New York. And some would say, oh, it's climate change. It's global warming. And that's the reason we have snow. Nope. It's just, it just is what it is. But let me hit a couple other things too, because I don't want to run out of time before I get some of the financial stuff in. So looking at the markets today, all the markets are pointing red except for the small cap, the Russell 2000, which is barely positive. Surprisingly, and Stephen, you and I were talking about this, Alphabet, Google, they missed. They're big in the AI space, and you would think that they wouldn't have missed, but they did. Their stock is down more than 7% on a revenue miss. AI investment boost, like they're saying they're going to dump, I think it was like tens of billions of dollars into AI, but it's nothing new. Here was another interesting thing, and then we'll come back to Google because I want to hit on NVIDIA. The other darling in the S&P 500, but private payrolls expanded. Mark this down. Can all of you just grab a piece of paper right now, pick up a pen? I want you to write this down. Okay. This is February 5th. So 2/5, and ADP said that private payroll expanded by 183,000. Okay. Just write that down. So private payroll expanded by 183,000, topping estimates. Now, what I want to do is I want to time how long it takes for that to be revised. That's all I'm trying to do here. So if that's what they're saying, private payroll is up, expanded by 183, give it a week, 2 weeks. Let's just see if news comes out that revises that. Because it just seems like every time they do that, they make a big deal of it and then they revise it. All right. Gosh, we hit on all this other stuff. Negotiate a nuclear deal with Iran after imposing maximum pressure. That's, gosh, that just popped up actually, Stephen. That's kind of eerie. Talking about doomsday clock. And then right here, Trump says he wants to negotiate a nuclear deal with Iran after imposing maximum pressure. That literally just popped up in the news feed. He's essentially saying Iran can't have nukes. I mean, how many of you want that crazy bastard to have nukes? Anyone? Anyone think that he's stable in the mind to have nukes? Because I certainly don't think so. Another thing, mortgage demand keeps dropping. So mortgage demand keeps dropping, which is definitely troubling as we're in the winter season right now. But as we kind of come into spring, like spring's usually really hot for real estate. But if mortgage demand keeps dropping, that's not going to be good. Oh, what else? Holy crap. There's just so many things. Let me hit one other thing. Let me hit the NVIDIA thing. I think this is important. This is a whole article, that was kind of alarming when I looked at it. It shows a chart for the Philadelphia Stock Exchange, the semiconductor index. And what this is showing is like that DeepSeek thing that came in. Now, I know it's kind of rebounded a little bit, but just, can you all see this? Look at how big of a drop that was. One domino, one piece of news, DeepSeek created all of this, but it gets even worse. NVIDIA, the darling. It says right here, I'm skeptical about the news because the Chinese don't create or invent anything. They steal it. Okay. And then it goes on to talking about his investment philosophy. This guy is very, very well known in the investment community, has done phenomenally well, but he's a very risk-adjusted investor. And I think he gives some great advice. I have warned for a while now that the risks are elevated in the market. This is what happens when risks are elevated. Someone comes out of left field and then the once most valuable company in the world tanks. So think about this. In one day, we heard about DeepSeek. Now everybody knows what DeepSeek is, but prior to that day, nobody knew what DeepSeek was. One day, something comes out and it challenges what we thought. We thought we were the rising power in AI, and maybe we are. I would say we probably are. But because of that, NVIDIA fell 17% in a day. Look at that. Look at that fall. That's just one piece of news. The S&P 500, and I covered this. I did a YouTube video on this, and then you got to watch the YouTube video, folks, at the Chris Naugle. This is one of the things I've been talking about, but I think one of the things you all need to really take incredibly serious is there's been a massive concentration in the markets. And it makes all sense, okay, because everybody wants the winners, so money just piles into the winners. Well, the winners happen to be 10 stocks that are heavily weighted in number one, what my opinion would be speculation, but heavily weighted in tech, AI. We don't even know all the potential. We know the potential of AI, but we don't know really all the potential. But there's so much speculation built in that the markets are so overheated, so overvalued that nothing makes sense. Nothing. Not NVIDIA, not Apple, not Google, clearly. So the problem is once you have something like this happens, where you got this concentration, just like it was, and I want to preface, just like the markets were identical to how the markets were concentrated back in 1929 or through the roaring 20s, also just like they were right before the dot-com crash happened. And I'll hit that right here. So all AI does is overfit previous stock data. Okay, so actually, let me skip that. The experience from 40 years ago when computers became part of life. So if you remember the history of this, 40 years ago, computers became part of life. And all the companies that made computers, they were the cherry. They were the ones everybody wanted. Let me just give you two names. WordPerfect, VisiCalc. How many of you know WordPerfect or VisiCalc? Stephen, you know what those companies are? Of course, it's 40 years ago. Those two companies were that would be like looking at Apple today and NVIDIA back then. But none of you know what these companies are. 40 years. That's the cycle. Okay. And when you look at the technology cycle, we're at the end of it. And here we are. But not only that, like when you're really looking at this concentration in the markets to 10 stocks, there's 500 stocks in the overall S&P 500, but it is literally concentrated right now down to 10 stocks make up 38% of the index. That's how concentrated it is. And you know all the stocks that are there. So DeepSeek comes out, rattles the markets. Okay. We rebound a little bit. We're not fully rebounded, but when the winners rise to the top, what happens when the winners aren't the winners anymore? What happens? Everybody sells very quickly. Exit stage left. There's always a seller and always a buyer. And the person selling is always selling at a loss or a losing value. The person buying is always buying low. But we are doing the opposite of this. So if you follow trend to the end, and that's what he's saying, that you just need to understand and respect risk. This is my biggest message I give to people with investing. And nobody seems to listen. I know all of you do, but like the public, like I get more shit on YouTube from people that just say that I'm completely wrong. If trend is your friend, okay, and you're managing risk, the more like as you get more aggressive, like you're putting yourself at more risk. And the time to take risk is not now. The time to take risk is when risk is low and risk is the highest right now. So we're doing the complete opposite. We are literally putting our foot down on the pedal when we should be taking our foot off the pedal. But that makes sense. It's been a long bull run. And a lot of the money investing are people that have never seen or felt the impact of a recession, which they're soon going to. So my fair warning to all of you is just get ready. Get very ready. Final article right here is another major divergence coming late in the game. So this one's just talking about the bubble. Okay, so it's been a 16-year bubble as of March. Isn't that crazy, Stephen? A 16-year bubble has been being created. The small cap Russell is retesting its late 2021 highs. It is probably not going to succeed. That's why I mentioned the Russell earlier. And it's basically just saying the troops are not following the generals. I mean, Warren Buffett, the generals, the big dogs, they're getting out of the market. And the troops, well, they're piling into the market. So it's kind of just the rally is just getting narrower and narrower. And it shows these two charts, whether you know what they mean or not. But basically what that means is the time is coming near. We're going to see this. These trade wars, the tariffs, all this stuff going on, they're just, it's all news until that news literally sets off the first domino. And the first domino could have been DeepSeek. First domino could be these tariffs when they actually go in force. Who knows? But just get ready. And, you know, I have an aunt. I'll just tell a quick story. And then, Stephen, I want you to wrap. I have an aunt that every month she brings me she works for the government. She brings me her TSP, her retirement account, and has me look at it. And back a while ago, I told her, you know, if you can't handle the heat in the kitchen, get out of the kitchen. So we reallocated her, you know, to some pretty conservative bonds. And, you know, the government has all sorts of really simple things like G fund and, you know, it's just very simple to invest. So she brings me the statement yesterday, and on there, it's got in big words on the front, what happened? Ouch. And I'm like, and I'm looking at the statement. I can't understand what the hell she's talking about. Cause like she made money. She made over 5.38%, which by all intensive standards, like in a conservative portfolio where you're protecting principal, that's a great return. And that's what most people can expect right now. Sitting on the sidelines is around a 5% return, which is fantastic. So she had made a bunch of money, but what she saw was, and the only thing she saw on all the pages of this statement were the red. There was like one $20,000 red, one $500 red. And she added it up and it was like over 20 grand, which is why she said, ouch, 20,000. All she saw on this entire statement was negative $20,000. Now it wasn't in gains. The gains were all positive. It was in transfers. When I looked deeper at this, which took me about 30 seconds, what I found is that someone, which would have to have been approved by her in this account, someone had moved money out of the conservative investments into the S investment, which is stocks. So that transfer, that thing she said ouch about, was literally probably her, or maybe she talked to the advisor of the TSP. I don't know. Somebody transferred money from the conservative investments to the risky assets. The exact opposite of what she told me she wanted. This is what I'm talking about. It is, comes back to education. We don't teach kids anything about money in the market, or about anything about money, about retirement, about saving. We don't teach them anything. So therefore, when someone gets a statement and they just see red, they think, oh my God, the world's ending. There was no world ending there. It was positive, all positive. But who moved the cheese is what I will ask her. Who moved the cheese? Because it couldn't have moved without you authorizing it. And why did you move it? Well, probably because the shoe shine boy told her, why are you so heavily invested in bonds? You need to move some of this over to the S stock account. I'll stop there. There's a very important hidden message in what I just said. I don't know how many of you picked up on that, but this is the problem. And it's going to continue to be a huge problem. What things do we got in here for Q&A?
Some good comments coming in. I'm just kind of replying to some of your questions. I don't see too much coming in from YouTube.
Oh, this is interesting. The United States, he just looked this up. The United States spends more money on each pupil and education than any other country in the world, but we're ranked dead last in education. I bet you if you look at that, Japan's probably almost number one. Norway, Sweden, yeah. Interesting. And it goes right into kind of probably what Lisa's saying and what those charts said. There's just too many cooks in the kitchen, too many people that know nothing about education telling teachers who know a lot about education and down to the root cause of how to teach their kids and their classes how to do their job. Broken. The only people pushing back is the teachers union is pushing back. Yeah. Anyway. So with that being said, this afternoon, we got an interesting thing on Wealth Webinar. All of you should join us. So you can join us at 1 p.m. Eastern. You just go to chrisnaugle.com, Naugle, and you can register for the Wealth Webinar, get my books for free just for doing that. But we've got a speaker coming on today that is one that I think really will kind of open up people's eyes in terms of the life insurance industry and how valuable it really is. A lot of people are literally, you're 3 feet from gold. There's a ton of people. It saddens me. People get in a pinch. Everybody on here, I think, knows we teach people how to create their own banking systems and be their own banks by instilling what Nelson Nash pioneered called the infinite banking concept. But one of the things that happens often is people get in a pinch, money gets tight, debts are high, things happen. And the first thing they're willing to do is they're like, I'm going to get rid of my policy, and they just want to surrender it back to the insurance company and take that. But what you're going to hear today is you're going to hear from somebody that will literally show you how anybody that's giving up their life insurance policy, especially the ones we design, especially designed and engineered ones, you are literally giving a truckload of gold away. You're literally trading a dump truck full of gold for a nickel when you surrender your policy. And you're going to hear how valuable these policies really are and how the insiders, I don't want to call them anything other than the insiders, but how the institutions and insiders know this when the average public does not. What else, Stephen? We got anything else we want to finish up on?
I just want to give a quick, just little shout out to the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles. We got a big Super Bowl coming up this Sunday. Of course, Chris, you and I will be watching together from Sundance, Utah, as well, along with about 15 or 20 of our closest clients and other partners. So good luck to whoever you're cheering on out there. And last thing I just want to finish on, I saw this image this morning and always gives me a lot of motivation. Just what an incredible human being, athlete, Michael Jordan, leader Michael Jordan was in his day. You see pictures of this and you think of trailblazers and industries and, you think of people like Donald Trump and Elon Musk, but, sports are such a big part of our everyday lives. And, in my opinion, sports play a big part in developing children and teaching them how to be part of teams and discipline and everything else. And so I just saw that image this morning and I just wanted to share it because to me, that is so motivational, just breaking through boundaries, breaking through records, setting a path for yourself. And at the end of the day, that's what we all strive to do is be better people, provide better value to the world, to our family, to our friends, and be there. And so, we go out there, Chris, every day. And I just figured it was right for a Wednesday. We have 3 different shows we do on Wednesdays. We do an agent training every Wednesday to help other people out there that want to promote and share being your own banker and the infinite banking concept, to show them what to do. And so today's a big day of giving back, and it just kind of made me think of all that stuff. So I appreciate everybody being on here. I look forward to seeing some of you guys this weekend in Sundance, Utah. And Chris, look forward to hanging out this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So, folks, we'll see you on Wealth Webinar, or maybe Ask Me Anything, or one of the many webinars that we do. Stay tuned. We'll be putting out a whole bunch of new stuff. And I'm just going to drop and seed something. MSTV is making a comeback. So stay tuned. We'll get more info on that later. With that being said, thanks for joining us for What the F Happened. And your questions were great. The news is at best a joke. So get your information from the right source. With that being said, we'll see you on the next one.